Lynn, my sister is Lori House. I think she's going to be listening, but I don't know if she's going to be on video or anything like that, just so you know.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Thank you. Okay. So welcome everyone, and thank you for being here today. I want to begin by acknowledging that, you know, every person here has experienced the death of someone or something deeply loved, whether that was a loss of a parent, a partner, a child, sibling, friend, or cherished animal companion. I want you to know that your grief is welcome here. My name is Lynn Muir. I'm the owner operator of lynnmuirgrief.ca. After becoming a certified grief educator, grief became a part of my own life in ways that changed me deeply. In 2010, my brother, my only sibling, died unexpectedly. Then my father died in 2017, and my mother 4 months later in 2018. Most recently, I experienced the death of my beloved cat, RP, who was 19 years old when he died. Each of these losses shaped me differently. Grief changed how I understand life, relationships, identity, and what it means to be supported. After a 35-year career as a registered nurse and healthcare leader, I chose to retire and begin this work. I felt called to do something that could support people living with the death of a person they love or a beloved companion animal, to become the kind of support that I did not receive after my own losses. Today's session is grounded in both professional experience and lived experience, and I'm grateful to share this time with you. I'd also like to recognize Dr. Gwen Cleveland, Gwen Wave, who supported content development for today's session. Gwen has been a nurse for almost 50 years. That's 50 years, and has worked across many settings, including grief and bereavement care, and other roles throughout her career. Gwen and I worked together on many projects over the last 10 years, and now I have the pleasure of collaborating with her in my new grief support practice. Thank you, Gwen. Gwen is also assisting today as our chat moderator, and she'll help me keep track of questions or reflections shared throughout the presentation. Before we begin, I'd like to invite us to take a brief moment of silence. Wherever you are today, I invite you to gently connect with the person or companion animal you are missing and send them love. Thank you. Today's presentation is about one of the most common and often one of the most painful experiences in grief, and that's guilt. Many people tell me that they can live with the sadness, they can live with the loneliness, but the guilt keeps them awake at night. Today, we're going to explore where grief comes from, why it is so common, and how we can begin treating ourselves with the same compassion offered to someone we love. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. Today's session is educational. While we'll talk about emotions that people experience, this isn't counseling or group therapy. We are never expected to share anything personal. If at any point you need a moment, please feel free to step away, stretch, get some water, or simply listen quietly. Feel free to use the chat throughout the presentation. It's just a small, intimate group, so feel free to do that. And I'll pause for questions near the end. Just like to read our land acknowledgement. This work takes place on the traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who have cared for this land since time immemorial. These lands include what is known as Brampton, where I live in Ontario, and Halton Hills, which is the neighboring community that I support, and are part of the Adjutant's Purchase, Treaty 19, and the Head of the Lake Purchase, Treaty 14, and Treaty 14A. With gratitude, we honor their enduring relationship with the land, water, and all living beings. The ground beneath us holds many stories of life, loss, resilience, and renewal. In this space, where we gather to honor grief and remember those we love, may we also pause to acknowledge the land that holds us. May we walk gently here with respect for people who have cared for this land for generations and with care for the community we share today. Those wishing to deepen their understanding of Indigenous lands where we work, I invite you to explore Native Land Digital at nativeland.ca, an interactive resource that helps people learn about the traditional territories, the treaties, and the language that connect us to the land around them. Thank you. Before we begin, I'd like to give you a little bit of a roadmap of today's presentation. It's divided into 4 parts that build on one another. We'll start by understanding why guilt is such a common part of grief, then explore why our minds create these feelings. From there, we'll gently shift towards self-compassion and self-forgiveness. And finally, we'll look at ways to carry our love and ourselves forward with greater compassion. My hope is that you'll leave today with a deeper understanding of your grief and a little more kindness towards yourself. Let's begin with a question. When you think about loss, and you can use the chat if you want, or you can just unmute and say it out loud. And Gwen, if there's anything in the chat, you can just let me know. When you think about loss, what emotion comes to mind first? First thing that pops in your head.
Sadness, grief.
Any others? I think at times I've had feelings of anger.
Emptiness, maybe?
Mhm. I know I had sort of feelings after my mother died. Um, a little bit of, she'd suffered for a long time, and I felt a little bit of relief. But I also, probably across the board with all the losses in my life, there's always been that feeling of guilt. Because guilt is one of the most common experiences after loss, yet it's one of the least talked about. People have told me things like, I should have visited. I waited too long. I acted too soon. I missed something. I should have noticed. I shouldn't have agreed to hospice. I shouldn't have chosen euthanasia. I should have done more. What I have learned is that guilt is rarely about wanting to harm someone. It's almost always about wishing we could have protected someone we love. To understand guilt, we first need to understand grief itself. People often expect grief to improve steadily, but that's not the reality. Instead, it's like waves. Sometimes it's calm, and sometimes it's overwhelming. Many people are sort of surprised when grief suddenly appears, months or even years after a death. It's on those, anniversaries, birthdays, songs, photographs, unexpected reminders. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. Healing means learning how to carry love differently. One reason grief surprises us is because of something I call, and Gwen and I talked a lot about this just moments ago, it's called echoes. An echo is anything that unexpectedly reconnects us with our grief. For person loss, it could be walking into a hospital. It could be seeing their handwriting. And you might find this in your children, your grandchildren, but or others, relatives, hearing your loved ones laugh in someone else's voice, cooking their favorite meal. For companion animal loss, finding a hair on a sweater. And this literally happened to me a couple of days ago. I found a hair on a sweater I hadn't put on in a while, and there was RP's hair. And I kind of chuckled to myself actually, because he left his hair everywhere. Sorry about that. Could be picking up an empty leash. It could be automatically reaching for a food bowl. Could be hearing tags jingle in another home. Echoes don't only bring sadness, they often bring guilt because suddenly our minds replay, what if only, I should have. Why does our brain do this? Why does it keep replaying these moments? The answer has less to do with weakness and more to do with how our minds try to make sense of profound loss. We're going to talk a little bit about making sense of guilt. Many people believe something is wrong with them because they can't stop playing events surrounding the death. In reality, it's a very normal response. Our brains don't like uncertainty. It doesn't like unanswered questions. It doesn't like randomness. So after someone dies, our minds begin searching for one missed symptom, one phone call, one treatment, one conversation, one decision. We replay these moments because our brain is trying to restore a sense of order. Hindsight gives us information today that we simply didn't have then. We judge yesterday's decisions using today's knowledge. And I want to repeat that. We judge yesterday's decisions using today's knowledge. For person loss, sometimes you say, I should have recognized the signs. I should have insisted on another test. I should have called an ambulance sooner. For companion animal loss, and I've felt this myself because it's very fresh. I should have noticed sooner. I waited too long. I acted too soon. I should have tried another treatment. Understanding why our brain does this helps us become more compassionate towards ourselves. This is one of the most important distinctions we'll make today. Regret. I wish I had visited. I wish I had said, I love you. I wish I had known. Regrets reflect wishing the past had been different. Shame says, I failed. I'm a terrible daughter. I'm a bad spouse. I'm a terrible pet parent. Unlike guilt, shame attacks identity. Guilt says, I made the wrong decision. I didn't do enough. I caused this. Many grieving people confuse guilt with responsibility, but responsibility is very different from blame. Often people carried responsibility because they loved deeply. That does not mean they caused the death. Once guilt takes hold, our minds often begin playing a very familiar game. Nearly everyone experiences some version of if only game. For person loss, I should have visited more. I should have answered the phone. I should have noticed. I shouldn't have gone on vacation. I should have pushed harder. Or our companion animal loss. I waited too long. I acted too soon. I couldn't afford the surgery. I should have sought another opinion. I shouldn't have chosen euthanasia. What do all these statements have in common? They're all spoken from today's perspective, not yesterday's. Love always believes it could have done more. But here's a question I'd like us to consider. I'm going to read this to you. I invite you to sit quietly for a moment. Get comfortable. And I want you to complete this sentence silently to yourself. I wish I had blank. Insert whatever words you want there. And now ask yourself, what does this wish tell me about my love? Just think into yourself, what does this say to you? Notice that your sentence probably didn't begin with anger. It probably began with love. We wish we had done more because we loved deeply. Our guilt often tells us much more about our love than it does about our actions. The next question is perhaps the most important one we'll explore today. How do you evaluate the decisions we made when there were no perfect choices? Let's talk about choosing compassion. One of the greatest sources of grief guilt comes from having to make decisions we never wanted to make. Many people describe these as impossible decisions. There wasn't a good option. There wasn't a perfect answer. There were only difficult choices. For people, families may have to had to decide whether to continue aggressive treatment, whether to honor comfort-focused care, whether to call hospice, whether to respect the wishes of someone they loved. For our companion animals, pet guardians often carry the enormous responsibility of making every medical decision, treatment, surgery, financial considerations, quality of life, euthanasia. Although the circumstances are different, the emotional experience is remarkably similar. People wonder, did I wait too long? Did I act too soon? Did I give up? We often expect ourselves to have made the perfect decisions during one of the hardest moments of our lives. But perfection was never available, only love. If perfection wasn't available, what should we judge ourselves by? This is one of the questions I return to again and again when supporting grieving people. Instead of asking, what did you do? Ask, what were you trying to do? Were you trying to protect? Were you trying to relieve suffering? Were you trying to respect someone's wishes? Were you trying to love well? Our intentions don't erase sadness. They don't remove grief, but they often tell us a much truer story than guilt does. Most people I meet were never trying to harm. They were trying to help. They were trying to love. They were trying to protect. Love always believes it could have done more. That doesn't mean it actually could. If our intention was to love, then perhaps the next step is learning how to offer the same love to ourselves. Many people think forgiveness means forgetting. It doesn't. Others believe if I forgive myself, I'm saying what happened was okay. It doesn't say that. Self-forgiveness says, I recognize I am human. I acted with the knowledge I had. I wish things had been different. I still love them. I am learning to stop punishing myself. I ask you this. If your closest friend told you this story, would you ask them, would you speak to them the way you speak to yourself? What would your loved ones say to you? What would your dog, your cat, your horse, your rabbit, what would they remember? The last day or a lifetime of love? Sometimes the most healing thing we can do is change the story we keep telling ourselves. This is an exercise I hope that you'll return to long after today. If you have a pen and paper, or you can use your phone, or just, say it in your head. Instead of asking, what did I do wrong? Try asking, what does this guilt tell me about your love? Complete these sentences. Today, I still carry guilt about blank. You can write that down or think it in your head. Or if you like, if you feel comfortable, you can put it in the chat as well. Now I want you to write, what does this really tell me? What this really tells me is blank. What does that really tell me? Maybe it's that I loved deeply. I wanted one more day. I wanted to protect them. I wasn't ready. I wanted more time. Guilt often hides love. When we gently uncover the love beneath it, our story begins to change. Love always believes it could have done more, but love was never meant to carry blame forever. As we come toward the end of today's session, I'd like to leave you with several practical ways that you can continue to work with guilt after today. It's about carrying love forward. Understanding guilt is important, but understanding alone rarely changes how we feel. Healing also requires practice. Speaking about your guilt, saying it out loud. Guilt often grows in silence. When we say it out loud to someone we trust, we sometimes hear how harshly we've been judging ourselves. If you like to write or you journal, writing slows our thinking. It allows us to notice where facts end and assumptions begin. Separating facts from feelings. I feel responsible is not the same as I was responsible. There's an important distinction. Challenging hindsight. You might ask, what did I actually know that day? Not, what do I know now? This is one of my favorites personally, but continuing your bond. You don't have to stop loving someone in order to heal. You could be doing remembering, rituals, conversations, look at photographs, celebrate anniversaries, and acts of kindness in their memory can all be healing expressions of continuing bonds. Healing isn't one decision. It's many small moments choosing compassion over self-punishment. Sometimes, however, the greatest compassion comes from imagining another perspective. I want you to sit comfortably again, and we're going to do a little bit of sort of envisioning and thinking. You can close your eyes or you can just lower your gaze. And I want you to imagine your loved one or your companion animal sitting beside you today. This may be the most difficult question I ask you today. Notice their face. Notice something about them that makes you smile. Now imagine them sitting quietly beside you. What would they say if they saw how much guilt you were carrying? Would they tell you to keep punishing yourself? Or would they remind you that you loved them, that you tried, that you stayed, that you cared? perhaps love asks something different of us. I'd like you to leave with one final reflection. Take a deep breath and then quietly repeat to yourself or out loud, whatever you're comfortable with. You can mute yourself and just say it to the air. I loved you. I did the best I could. I carry you with me. I'm learning to carry you with compassion. Notice how those words feel. They may not feel completely true today. That's okay. Sometimes healing begins by practicing words we hope will become true. As we come to the end of our time together, I'd like to leave you with the most important messages from today. Love always believes it could have done more. Feeling guilty is not the same as being guilty. We make decisions with the knowledge we have, not the knowledge we gain later. Our guilt often tells us more about our love than about our actions. We want to learn to remember with compassion. If you remember nothing else from today, I hope you'll remember these 5 truths. They won't remove the grief, but they may soften the weight of unnecessary guilt. Before I finish, I'd like to share a few resources that many people have found helpful. If you go to my website, lynnmuirgrief.ca, there's a resource page, and there are a plethora of resources for loss of a person or loss of an animal companion. There's books, there's other websites, there's other resources to read. There are books, and I wanted to show you 2 that I've read recently. Uh, and there, I've put them on my website, but I don't know if you can see this, but Then and Now, it's by another grief educator, Kim Henchy. And I have to say, it's probably one of the best authentic books I've read about loss. And she speaks about the loss of her son and her husband. Her son died of an accidental overdose of fentanyl, and her husband died 3 months later. She just talks about how she lived through that. And then for animal or companion loss, this one is really great too. It's called Goodbye Friend. And it's really, really well done. I've read a few books, and this one, after the loss of my beloved RP, I found this one very helpful. So please, those are all on my website. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Instagram at Lynn Muir Grief and on Facebook, and I post there I'm not a great content creator, but I just put on there what I'm feeling that day or what sort of crossed my mind, and hopefully you'll find it helpful. I also have available one-on-one support that I do virtually. I have pet and person loss support groups. Those are starting again in the fall. I have drop-in grief cafes. We'll be doing some workshops, some exciting stuff coming up, and Gwen and I are working on. I'm really excited about how grief affects our brain. Webinars like you've joined today, there'll be more of those on a monthly basis. And then in October, I'll be doing an in-person fall retreat. I'm really excited about that one.
Lynn, I just wanted to mention there are a few comments in the chat box. So
Yes.
Christella wrote about and acknowledged her cat, Emma, and just identified that she wished she had known Emma had been in so much pain, knowing when it had started and not finding out until it was, in Christella words, too late. And just I'm gathering from what you've written, Christelle, that you're struggling with, could have gotten her help to take away her pain sooner. Leanne posted a message about missing her dad's final moments and wrote, as a palliative nurse, I should have known the signs and missed it. How did I not know? And that one I replied to by something from my experience. And that is that people have often had to remind me that in situations like that, I'm the family member, I'm not the nurse. Right? You're like separate kind of thing. And although as the nurse, you have the knowledge, it's your heart, the daughter, that is front and center. I didn't catch the name of the Goodbye Friend book.
Yeah.
I posted in the chat box Then and Now by Kim Henchy. And for
Gary
Goodbye,
Kowalski. Kowalski.
okay, one sec. I'll just get
Yeah.
in so I can edit it and put in. Um,
Kowalski with the K. And the links are in on my website as well under books. There's so many books that Gwen and I put together.
right. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to put that in.
Yeah.
Oh, and Lori messaged in the e-chat. Oh, here it is. Lori wrote, struggled with not planning to come home sooner, waited, and should have been there with family for that weekend. So,
Mhm,
yeah,
mhm, mhm.
these are all, as you said earlier, very common um, recurring themes, if you will, within our mind that
Yes.
our
Yeah,
brain just.
I can
Right,
totally relate
yeah,
to being a nurse and palliating my mom and I felt like all the knowledge that I had after 30 years in palliative care just went out the window. I actually had to have a good friend come in and look at my mom and say to me, yes, she's dying. Because I felt like my brain just would not work. And that happens, when it's someone you love. So I can totally relate.
yeah.
And
And
that game of woulda, coulda, shoulda.
yeah. And Christella, just to go back to what you shared, I think you remember my dogs Bailey and Dexter. And Bailey walked into a twig on a bush one day when I was walking him, and it was several days later. My sister noticed there was something wrong with one of his eyes. I totally missed it, did not pick up on the fact that his eye was swollen. Ended up doing an emergency run to the hospital. He needed emergency surgery, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I get it,
Yeah.
right?
It's that game, right? That we were talking about where it's the woulda, coulda, shoulda. So,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
But he gave no indication that he was in any kind of pain. There was no change in his behavior at all. It was my sister, who hadn't seen him for a while, looking at him and said to me, "There's something wrong with one of his eyes." And the light bulb went on.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
for sure. Yeah. So I just want to say thank you for allowing me to spend time with you. I know that every person who joined today brought someone with them in their heart. I hope today's conversation has helped you to see that guilt is often not a measure of wrongdoing. It's a reflection of love searching for somewhere to go. Perhaps the opposite of grief guilt isn't forgetting. Perhaps it's learning to remember with compassion. Because love was never meant to become a life sentence of guilt. Thank you. I'm just going to stop sharing so I can see everybody's wonderful faces. Were there any questions and any thoughts that came to your mind? And just open your mic and say them. Or if you feel more comfortable, you can put it in the chat. We can.
I think with my guilt, I can conceptualize it that yes, I'm the daughter. Yes, sometimes people, if I were to talk to another family member, I would tell them, maybe he was waiting for you to leave, all those types of things, but it doesn't help.
Yes.
So I can't counsel that feeling on myself, by myself anyway.
In early grief, that those early days, they're tough. They're tough. You know, there's a lot of pain and your mind is trying to make sense of things. And, it's not like you snap your fingers and those feelings go. Like, my brother's been gone almost 15 and a half years. And there's times when I still think if I just gone sooner, you start to replay, like, especially time leading up to the death, that weeks or weeks before their death, you walk through it and say, okay, that was a spot where I should have done something or could have done something or should have done something, you know, for sure. It definitely still happens. And we talked about those echoes, right? Those grief waves. And I'm going to be honest with you, they never go away. They don't. Um, and because my losses are a little bit older, I can say sometimes I welcome those. I'm like, hey, I felt that. That means I'm thinking of my loved one. I'm thinking of Scott. I'm thinking of my mom. I'm thinking of RT. When I found that hair, RP's hair on my shirt the other day, actually somehow it ended up in, I guess I was pulling my shirt, it ended up in my mouth. And I was like, what the heck is that? And I just felt like, hey, he was saying something to me, right? Hey, mama. Hi, mom. You know? So sometimes those moments, and when it's new, no, it's
No,
just,
right now it feels like rather than waves, it feels like kicks in the gut.
yep. It feels like a tsunami, right?
Yeah,
Um, yeah, it hurts.
it does.
Yeah.
And this is
And
where,
then there's another part. Sorry to interrupt, Gwen. There
no,
was
no,
another of a moment where I wasn't necessarily feeling the grief that I felt. oh my God, am I forgetting him? And that was another
Yeah.
a guilt, right? Like, oh, you're gonna forget, you know?
And
Yes.
that's also a very common occurrence.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so interesting, Leanne, that you say that. And the reason I kind of chuckled when you said that, because I was like, oh my God, you must have been in my head. Because I'm like, did my brother, like, was he here? Did he like, did he exist? And you have these weird thoughts like, am I going to forget him? And what about his voice? And he used to say this, he used to say frickin' all the time, like the frickin' idiots over there and the frickin' that. And it's like, no, hold on a second. I cannot forget him. He was real, and the evidence of him is everywhere. It's in my memories, it's in pictures, it's in the son he left behind. You know, he, I can't forget him. So,
And do you
yes,
still have this bench
natural.
that you had for your brother?
Pardon me?
Do you still have the bench that you had for your brother? I believe you remember you telling us.
Yes.
Mm,
Yes, yes. I'll put if you follow me on social media, I'll go down there because I was thinking of walking down to the path
right.
where I have a bench and a plaque for him, and I thought I should take folks down there with me
Yeah,
on social media. I'm becoming like this social media
absolutely.
person. Um, and I was thinking about because there's sort of different types of grievers, right? There's those instrumental and and intuitive grievers. So, you know, there's some gender preferences, like men tend to be, um, more of the doers, right? Like in their grief and demonstrate where women tend to be more intuitive. They like to talk to people about it. They like to express themselves. They like to write the poetry and stuff like that. And now, genders, honestly, it has no real, I feel like I'm both. But interestingly enough, I seem to be more instrumental and putting that bench and that plaque for my brother.
Right.
And it's like, well, unless there's a landslide, right, where that is, which is possible, it will be there forever.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I mean, our relationship years ago, and I remember your brother's name. I remember that you telling us about that stuff. I mean, so things stick with people, right? That you
Yeah,
don't expect them to. But I mean, I have memories of your
of
brother,
your,
so
oh.
he lives on. He lives on.
Yeah, for sure. And when we say their name, it's so interesting. I was listening to some mothers. I volunteer as a moderator at Tender Hearts, which is a David Kessler grief support group. And I volunteer to moderate some of the individual groups. And mothers were there who had lost children. And they said, and I thought this is true actually for all of us. We just want people to say their names. Scott.
Right.
Enid, Stan, RP. And just, I'll see your hand, Christella, but one of the things I thought was so interesting, we also love stories about our loved one, right?
Mhm.
So I remember, like, and this is years later after my dad died, somebody came up to me and said, oh my goodness, I totally remember your dad. I
Mm.
remember he was walking up Mount View, which is a main street in Georgetown where he lived. And they said, "Oh yeah, we used to see him all walking up the," and this is years later. And the feeling I got, I was just, I was so grateful that they said, "Oh yes, we know, we saw your dad. He'd be walking up to the bank or to have a coffee." And I was like, "You don't realize what that means to the griever, right? To
Well,
tell
absolutely.
stories." Yeah,
Well,
Christelle.
during our time with dad, just after we lost him, there was a period of where he lives a few hours away from me, and I wanted him to come live over on this side, and I always felt he was lonely. He must be so lonely, right? And when we had just a short period after he died, and then the funeral, so many people were coming to us, and it was like dad was just a famous man in a small town. Everybody knew dad. He was always like everybody came to the hospital. It was always a crowd in the hospital. Like, and he was in there for a few months, right? But it was
Yeah.
steady, like 5, 6 people coming. And I'm like, where are all these people coming from? And I just thought, like being there myself was like, okay, well, I better go spend some time with him. Don't want to be alone. Don't want him to be alone. But he was never alone. He was never
Isn't that
alone. And he
interesting?
lived a good life over there. And that was a relief for us. Like my sister and like we were just like, and I mean, often when we talk about my dad, Ted, even on this side where we were from, if we say we're Audrey's daughters, didn't know. But if we said we were Ted Lush's daughters, oh, I know
Oh
Ted.
my
I know Ted.
God.
And
Yeah.
it's so warming, like you said, to hear the name, to hear the
It's
stories.
emotional in a good
Very,
way, right? Yeah, it's
very,
emotional in a good way. Yeah.
absolutely.
Christella.
I just want to say, firstly, it's so beautiful to hear you talking, Leanne. And maybe your dad's light that touched others is actually the light that's going to help you find your own healing.
I agree.
But what do I know? Um, so I wanted to share that I'm a walker and I've walked the Camino across Spain and up Portugal now. And I remember out of the blue one day, my son Dean said this to me, and it was actually many years ago. My first Camino was 20 years ago. And he said, Mom, when you die, I'm going to take your ashes and walk the Camino and scatter them there. So I just thought it seemed really interesting and meaningful for me, Lynn, hearing you say, the difference between the intuitive griever and um, how men and women process things, how children and adults process things. And it's good to remind myself and be, with others talking because, that's Dean's a doer and that's what he would do. Certainly he at the time when he talked to me, that's what he said. Whether he'll do it now with 2 little children and a busy family, etc., is another thing. But I think what touched my heart so deeply was just knowing that.
Yeah. And it'll give him great comfort as well, right?
Yeah.
For sure. Well, folks, our time has come to a close. You don't understand, like I'm doing the presentation, but I'm getting so much from you and, learning about your loved ones and your losses, whether it was a person or an animal companion. It's very meaningful to me. And in many ways, this work that I'm doing is somewhat selfish because I get to meet or reconnect with people and learn their stories that have a great impact on me. So I just want to thank you again. And I hope to see you again at our next webinar, and that information will go out. I believe Gwen and I are going to do about an amazing book called Grief and the Brain. And it's fantastic, and we could probably do a full day seminar on it, but we'll be talking about that again. So I hope you'll join us then. And I just want to say goodbye if you want to unmic and just say goodbye and thanks for being here. Thanks,
Thank you, Liz.
everyone. Thanks,
Thank you.
Wonderful.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Lori. Thanks, Nicole.
Thanks,
Bye.
Gwen.